Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hey, Dr. Syms here, Dr. Mark Syms here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature top leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Arizona Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so they can connect better with their family and friends and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about helping patients is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First, from his hearing loss from the radiation from his brain tumor, and then again when he passed away. I only care for ears. I'm the E of ENT, who has performed over 10,000 ear surgeries over the past 10 years. I'm the founder of the Arizona Hearing Center. I'm the author of a book, Listen Up. Go to listenuphearing.com to learn more about it, and my practice is at azhear.com. Today, I have Dr. Richard Bailey. He is a ENT colleague of mine who practices up in Northwest Arizona. Him and I did the same residency at Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. He graduated before me. He was chief resident when I arrived. He did his undergraduate and medical school, impressively, at Emory, and then trained in the military. He's an excellent ENT, takes great care of patients. We've shared patients for the past 20 years, and I'm really excited to have him on Listen Up today. Hey, Rich, welcome, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So Rich, one of the questions I just love asking people is like, tell me your medical journey. Like, so you were a young kid, or somehow, how'd you end up becoming an ENT? Like, from the beginning, what was your upbringing and how'd you end up doing all that?
It's a very interesting story, actually. My father is a otolaryngologist, ENT specialist. And early on in my youth, I realized I wanted to be a doctor. But the last thing I wanted to be was an ENT specialist. That was the thing. I said, I don't want to
anything but what you are, Dad, right?
Yeah, I don't want to follow my dad, do what he's doing. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to pay, blaze my own trail.
Right.
So I was focused. And the interesting thing is, when I was young, I didn't pay attention to school that much until I decided, you know what? If I'm going to be a doctor, I got to start paying attention. I swear to God, I was 11 years old. I just went on this journey. I forced myself to read every day. I was reading books every day because I was getting ready. So everything was just a path to get to this destination. So I go to, and people graduate from high school and they're so excited and everything. I wasn't even excited because it was just a path.
Right. It was on your way.
I didn't go to my prom. I didn't go. I just had one focus. So, all right. So I get to medical school. And at first I said, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. That was my thing. I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. And in our third and fourth year, how you do rotations.
Yeah.
So I did a rotation in orthopedics and I loved it. But when we would have grand rounds and they were talking about all these angles and blah, 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 and this, I realized I'm not going to make it. I'm not smart enough. So, but they loved me. They were like, yeah, you should apply for our program. But so I decided, I switched gears. I knew I wanted to be a surgeon. So I looked into OB/GYN and I liked GYN surgery. I actually liked the dissection at the time when we were doing dissection in med school first year. I actually liked that area of the body. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an OB/GYN. I love the GYN part. The OB
wasn't for you.
Wasn't for me. I couldn't handle the unpredictability.
Yeah.
I'm a plan. I'm a get ready plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to turn out. This is what we're going to do. This thing about, all hell breaking loose in 5 minutes. And after you plan,
C-sections were not your thing, right?
Yeah, it wasn't my thing. So interesting enough, when I did a rotation at Madigan Hospital in OBGYN, after the first week, I realized this is not for me. I went to the chairman and he was not happy. I said, "Sir, this is not for me." I left his office, and funny enough, across the hallway, Madigan, it was the old hospital, which was like it was a one-story, like the Pentagon.
Okay.
So the ENT department was literally right across the hallway. I walked in there. I spoke to the chair. I went straight to the chairman's office. I said, "Listen, you know what? Blah blah blah. I'm going to give this a shot." And I remember after the first week, I said, "I've just been I've just been driving around the desert aimlessly. This is my destiny."
You weren't aimlessly. You were running away from your dad. You didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I was right. Yeah, I was running away from my dad, whatever it was. And after that, that was it. I'm an ENT specialist. I've loved it since. It's the greatest specialty. We have 7. It's not like general surgery where all you do is appendix and the gallbladder. There's only one thing. ENT is 7 disciplines. You can pick and choose what you like. You can choose one discipline. You can pick little things in each discipline. It's the greatest surgical specialty. So that's how I ended up where I am today.
I bet your dad was pretty happy too.
He was. I think he was surprised, but he was and also happy. Yeah.
Yeah, because it let you get you. Well, that's nice too. He let you take your own process to get there too, right?
Yeah.
I assume he's retired.
He never pushed me to be a doctor, but he fostered it. He knew. I said, "Dad, I want to." So like summers, I worked in his office. I did hearing tests. I actually used to be like a hearing aid tech.
No, that's
I would
great.
do hearing tests. I took X-rays, sinus X-rays. I did all that stuff. He took me to surgery. This is amazing. My dad lived in Georgia. He was in Atlanta for a few years, and I went to Crawford Long Hospital. I actually assisted my dad in sinus surgery in Crawford Long Hospital. He just brought me into surgery, told him, "Oh yeah, this is my son."
He's gonna help.
I mean, that would never happen today.
No,
He just brought me off the street, and I remember doing this, and I was like, "Wow, this is cool." Just building blocks.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Your dad had you doing sinus surgery. That's awesome. Well, tell me, all of us have like these patients that we remember that, kind of moved us, or, you know what I'm talking about? Like that one patient where you're like, either, wow, this is great what I'm doing, or wow, this is really amazing. Tell me one of those stories,
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, like where you like that, you have that moment like, wow, this is great, or,
Yeah. Actually, I have those moments all the time.
I don't know. Many of my colleagues.
I do. It's that's why I'm a doctor, just baseline. That's why I'm a doctor. I want to make that difference in people's lives, make them better. And in my private practice, I hear those stories all the time. But there's one particular lady that I always remember. And it's just recently, in the last, 15 years, she had sinus problems, sinonasal problems, allergies, and she had like 2 surgeries. And believe it or not, no one ever addressed her allergies. All they did was surgery, give her short-term solutions, but they never explained to her her problem and fixed her problem, which was the baseline. The bottom line is you have allergies. So she suffered for 30 years with the problem. She came to me having infections all the time, blah, blah, blah. And she was thinking, as usual, they come and they say, "Oh yeah, I need sinus surgery again. I'm having all this, blah, blah, blah." So, her sinuses are wide open. There's no more surgery to do. I said, "Ma'am, you don't need any more surgery." And so I I treat her allergies. I put her on immunotherapy, which is sublingual therapy. I did not SCI, not
It drops under the tongue, right?
It drops under the tongue. And now, after 10 years of therapy, she's no longer taking allergy medicine.
That's awesome.
None. And so, when I said she does use a saline, but I put on drop, and the funny thing is, I got, you know how Google sends you messages saying you have a bad review?
Right.
Well, I never, admittedly, and I'm probably ashamed to say, but I don't read those bad reviews. But for some reason, I read this bad review. And you know who replied and defended me?
It was her.
She did. She gave the story, and that was all I needed to. So that story encapsulates why I do what I do.
Well, you're her champion and she's your champion, right?
She's my champion. And she moved. She moved last year. And I had my staff. She called my office and said, I'm moving, and just let Dr. Bay know, blah, blah, blah. Because, I make her come in once a year, but, just to make sure everything's good. So she tells me I made my staff call her, get her address. So, because I'm going to write her a letter. This is just recent. I'm going to write her a letter thanking her and telling her she's not going to any ENT doctor unless she tells me who the person is, and I
say it's okay.
Right. And I check and make sure they're going to do the right thing.
Yeah. So that's a great story, because what it really brings about the privilege of being a physician is how much our patients do for us sometimes too. Right. I mean,
yeah,
her defense, but like the satisfying thing is like when, they make us feel good, not just you making them feel good.
Correct. Right. It's all the hard work, all the stuff that's done in the background. It's worth it if you could change. People, it is to suffer for 20, 30 years and it just, for some reason, falls through the cracks,
Yeah. Well, that's why you started reading those books when you were 11.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'd seen you recently, and I noticed you have hearing aids. So that's a new addition. Tell me about your hearing journey, right? So you're hearing treated, but tell me, you were telling me before. Tell me, like, when you think back about it, how long have you had hearing loss, and tell me how you discovered it.
Well, so I started to sort of start from
the current and move back. Yeah.
Yeah. I started wearing hearing aids actually in January of this year.
Okay. So a couple of months.
Yeah. And it was basically because of the pandemic. People started wearing masks, and I'm not hearing. And so I decided that this is ridiculous. I got to get hearing aids. I always knew I had hearing loss for years, but I guess I compensated by lip reading to get by. And it wasn't a struggle. It was just a normal thing I grew into, I guess. And but the mask thing changed that. But when I think back on it, I think I had hearing loss even when I was a kid.
Right.
Because as I was saying I remember listening to music. When you're 11, 10, 11, 12, that's when you start getting into music. That's when your friends start listening. And I remember I couldn't pick out the lyrics. Everybody could recite the lyrics, but I said, man, these people, they speak too fast. That was my answer. And I thought, oh yeah, I just can't hear it. So, I can't hear the lyrics. So I'm thinking that people speak too fast. I had all these other excuses, blew that off. Time goes on. Then when I joined the military and they do a screening hearing test, they're like, wow, you have hearing loss. At that time, my frequency I had high frequency hearing loss. My low frequencies were still sort of within the range.
Right.
So, but they're not going to disqualify somebody who's going to be a doctor.
Right.
the threshold is low.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you also weren't in the battlefield that much, I suspect.
yeah. So that's when I realized that I had a diagnosis really that I had sensory hearing loss. Then my son was born with hearing loss. That was another piece to the puzzle. I said, well, what, and then my father in his 50s got severe hearing loss that rapidly progressed over like a 10, 15-year period. So it's obvious that I have a family history. I have a genetic predisposition in my family for hearing loss. Right. Maybe it's on my father's side, So, and I now that I'm wearing hearing aids, it's amazing what I didn't hear.
Yeah, I always tell patients, you don't know what you didn't hear, right? It's even in your childhood, you didn't realize what you weren't hearing.
Yeah, I wasn't hearing. Yeah, it's and the audiologist and hearing aid dispenser that worked with me, they told me that. They said, listen, when you start wearing hearing aids, you're gonna have this experience of everything seemingly too loud, tinny, blah blah blah. It's because your brain, that part of your brain isn't accustomed to hearing this stuff.
Right.
And they're absolutely correct. And even I'm guilty. I thought hearing aid technology was, you're just increasing the volume of the sound. That's not it. It's actually enhancing. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but it's actually enhancing the sound.
It's audibility, making it more audible or perceptible.
Yeah, it's more than just turning up the volume. It enhances I didn't realize what that meant until
it's clarity too, right? It's not just making things louder; it's making things clearer.
And it's making them clear because the sound is crisp. It's not. Even when I take off my hearing aids, you could turn the volume up of the speaker as loud as one. Yeah, I can hear a little better, but it's not like hearing aids.
Right.
It's different. So I now really appreciate my hearing loss population, my patients.
Yeah. So
when they come into my office, so listen to this. So even now, even with the pandemic, when I have a hearing loss patient and they wear hearing aids, I take the mask off.
Yeah, I do too. I drop it, I step back, I lower my mask because that they need the lip reading to supplement their hearing loss. Yeah.
Right.
And most of them they'll thank you because what they'll say is you actually realize enough about hearing that that I need this. So you do that, which a lot of other people just go to them. And I mean, when I'm doing patients before cochlear implants, I always say to the staff, I say, you got to lower your mask. They're like, what do you mean? I said, they're about to get a cochlear implant. If they don't look at your lips, they don't understand anything you're saying.
Right. So, yeah, that's the deal.
Well, that's great. What have you heard with your hearing aids that you forgot you'd stop hearing? Is there something like, some people say, I didn't know my refrigerator made a noise, or is there anything like
that? That's a very good question.
That's all right.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything specific. I
you know what? Wife is happy.
Yes, my wife is happier. My kids are happier. But you know what? I know what. When I'm typing on the keyboard,
hearing the keys click. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I didn't realize how loud the keyboard was. Yeah.
People say I hadn't heard the blinker in the car for a long time.
Yeah.
That's
it's incredible.
I think it's important, right? You're sharing your hearing journey, and I think where it's great for you is you're a physician, so and an ENT, so this stuff, and you can share with people. It's we, as much as we don't like to, physicians have medical problems too, or medical issues that need to be addressed. So it's really great to give that perspective.
And the thing is, hearing aids today I mean, that it's the technology, comfort, it's light years ahead of even 10 years ago.
Well, it's like looking at
I
an
mean, not
iPhone 1, right? What look at the iPhone
correct.
1 of your current iPhone, right?
Exactly. It's way more comfortable. I mean, you right. We're dealing with patients in the old days with the moles, and they're eating, and the thing pops out, and the
Right.
fullness, the occlusion effect. I mean, I'm wearing this thing, and it's comfortable. I you know with this you I will never forget this. I went. This was before I was wearing hearing aids. I remember I went to Phoenix, and the gentleman who was taking me to my rental car, he had this style hearing it in a new style, right? With
Right.
the
Open dome, open fit.
and, yeah, and I said to him, I said, "Hey, how you like those hearing aids?" He's like, he like was shocked. He's like, I noticed it. He said, "Wow, you still?" I said, "Yeah, I'm an ear, nose, and throat specialist." He said, "Man, this has changed my life. I wear my hearing aids now. I don't even remember I have them in." He said, "Just the other day, I jumped in my pool with my hearing aids on. I didn't even remember I had my hearing aids."
Well, I think that's a great story though, because if you knew you had them on all the time, you'd make sure you took them out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a problem for the device, but it speaks to the comfort. If you forget
Yeah,
you're wearing it,
but the interesting thing, his hearing aids were water resistant, so they didn't get damaged.
yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, so are phones now too, right? In the beginning, when you got your smartphone, if you got water on it, it was toast. Now they're water
yeah,
resistant, so it's all
water resistant. Yeah.
yeah. So that's really great. I think that's a great story. So one of the other things I love to ask people is like, say you're at a lifetime achievement award, and people say, well, who are you going to thank? Like, who are the people that you would thank in your journey, your medical personal journey? Like, if you were to say, like, these are the people I want to thank for my life's journey, who would those people be?
Um. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my family.
I think that's
Well,
great.
my family was. I mean, that's the bedrock. They supported me. I mean, I I'm from the Caribbean, from Barbados, and um, my dad when he in order to become a doctor, my dad won a scholarship. It's called a Barbados Scholarship. You take in the British system, you have O levels, A levels, which you take in order, and the A levels is the final one in order to qualify to go to college.
University. Yeah.
University is the best term. So at my dad's time, only 5 people, the top 5 people in the nation, got the scholarship. My dad was one of the top 5, and he ended up going to Jamaica, Britain to become an ENT specialist. So the concept of leaving Barbados to go,
Sure.
to get your best education was not foreign to my family. So my family early on, they planned for us to take us out of Barbados to go, and the original plan was to go to Canada for us to further our education, blah blah blah. So that sacrifice that they made, I mean, my parents, they had a great job, blah blah. Then you come to the United States, you're like starting over again,
Right.
and they did that for the
For the
for their
kids.
kids. You know what I'm saying? So I'm eternally grateful. I That's sacrifice.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's a great
that's
story.
number one. The second person is actually Dr. Yim.
Mhm.
Listen, Dr. Yim changed my life. Uh,
Dr. Yim
I
was the
had
guy who ran our residency in Hawaii. He was there for
right.
a long time, and he was a philosopher. People would say there are Yimisms, like he had all of these.
Yeah, Dr. Yim. He was a chief of the ENT department,
Before you say
and
that, one real
yes,
quick thing, I do say to the residents, one of the things he used to say is, you must really love operating because it is taking you so long. And sometimes I won't say it to the residents, but I'll tell the story. So, this guy used to say, you must really love operating because you're taking so long. And they kind of I'm like, keep it moving here. So anyway, I'm sorry to
Oh my God. But he taught me not just about being an ENT doctor and techniques, and he taught me about what my education is supposed to do. It's supposed to give me the confidence to go and learn about other stuff,
right.
learn about my profession. The things I do now, probably 30% of the stuff I do now, I didn't learn in residency.
Right. You keep on eternal learning, continuing to learn.
Yes. He said your education is to teach yourself how to learn. And I know that seems like a simple concept, but he from the day I met him, that first year, he taught me, and he taught me how to analyze things. I read things and I say, okay, how am I going to get this done? And he allowed me to how I compartmentalize things. And that's how I learned today. Anytime I learn a new procedure, I use the yimism. I use the yim technique, and it has never failed me.
Did you read 200 words, 200 pages an hour? Or he used to say something like,
I never read. Unfortunately, I never reached that.
No, me neither. But he used to say, read 200 pages an hour. And I look at him like, what are you, how do you do that?
Because he said you're not supposed to read every line.
Right.
Remember? It was the third person is a ENT specialist named Dr. Philip Schoenfeld. So when I left residency, my first assignment was at Fort Bragg Medical Center in North Carolina.
Right.
And he was 1 year ahead of me. So he's only been there a year, and he was the chief.
Of course.
And the thing about Phil trained at Walter Reed, and he was a very aggressive surgeon. Very aggressive. He was actually in the mode of Dr. Yin, but he took it to another level. And I watched him. I watched him, and he actually took me to another level where I said, I can do this stuff. I can do it. He gave me the confidence. I saw what you can do, right? And so, but I'm not lying. So we left, both of us left the military, blah, blah, blah. He did his facial plastics fellowship. He ends up in Washington. I think he's in Washington, D.C., that area. I periodically would see him, but I lost track of him, stay there for 15 years. Hadn't seen him personally. I saw him in 2018 at a conference. And I pulled him aside. I said, Phil, I've never told you this, but you're one of the most important people in my career. And he was shocked. He's
like, I was just doing my thing, right? Is that what
I was just doing my thing? And I say, hey, I just want you to know that I really appreciate you. And
well, that actually great. And I think that's great that you did that too, right? That you went.
Yeah, I just want them to know, people don't know. You go through life, there's the smallest things you do, or big, but things you do has a lasting impact on some people.
Yeah. It's funny. You just bring back I was in medical school, and I was in Boy Scouts growing up, and I was the senior patrol leader, and there was a kid about 2 years behind me. And, to be honest with you, he was kind of a screw up. Right. And I just looked at him, I said, why are you doing this? You just got to stop doing this. Like, you're not making sense. Right. Didn't really think anything about it. I'm in medical school. He's in medical school. He's 2 years below me. Right. He pulls me aside. He goes, Mark, I just want to let you know, when you told me that, like, it was like my wake up call, like, because you just said to me, like, what are you doing? And he's like, because of that, I straightened myself out, and here I am in medical school. Now,
exactly.
I'm not taking credit for it. It's just, you never know when those things are going to change somebody.
It's going to change you. I'm just telling you, And so I had it's kind of funny you say that, because when my son was 8, 9 years old, I volunteered to be a soccer coach for AYSO. And there was a kid that was on the team. He was probably the best player on the team, but he was very quiet. And I could tell he didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And I took him under my wing. I brought him into my family, sort of, I did a lot of things for the kid. And, he's now 25 years old. He texted me about 2 years ago. He still has my cell number. He texted me 2 years ago and he said, listen, you did more for me than even my father did.
Wow, that's great.
You gave me confidence and a voice. I mean, he texted me. I kept the text. He said, you gave me confidence and a voice. I started believing in myself. I realized I was worth it. Blah, 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 this and that. Man, I broke down.
That's great. Well, that's beautiful. It really is.
I see him today. I see him today sometimes. He comes to when my son comes to town, they're still friends. He comes by my office. I mean, it's incredible.
That's great. I mean, and that is outside of medicine why people love being in medicine, right? That you can make those changes in people's lives. But the beauty is you've taken it outside of medicine too. And I think that's really admirable. That's really great. Right? Yeah. I mean, what a great story. I mean, really to have that happen in your life at all is a privilege.
Yeah. It's part of being a doctor.
It is.
Right?
It is. Well,
making a difference.
Right. The educational part, in the old days, I always say to patients, sometimes they want them to get better. I go, well, why don't we call you guys patients? I said, did you ever think before we were able, to be able to do all this technical mumbo jumbo, we used to just kind of sit next to you and say, you're going to get better. Time will get you better. Be patient. And that's why we call them, right? And so that kind of more shepherding effect rather than just, doing a procedure.
Right.
So, which is dropping your mask and saying to hey, I understand that communication's hard for you. And I understand what it's like to be you, and I'm going to help you. So that's really great. So this has been great. I really appreciate you sharing with yourself. Today we've been talking to Dr. Richard Bailey. He's an ENT up in Bullhead City. Hey, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
My telephone number is 928-763-1020. It's called the Dr. Bailey MD ENT practice. And where I take new patients, and I'll be happy to see any and everyone.
Yeah, and take great care of them, most importantly. So, hey, thanks a lot, man. It's been great talking to you. I appreciate it.
Same here, Sam. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.